light slipped through the half-open blinds, cutting across the white sheets of thin, golden stripes. The air smelled faintly of coffee and something heavier regret. Vine lay still for a long time, listening to the silence that stretched between them. The hum of the city almost distant, as though the world was politely pretending not to notice what had just happened. Beside her, Jungkook sat at the edge of the bed, shirt unbuttoned, half loosely around his neck. His back was so tense, shoulders rigid, his eyes fixed on the floor. He looked like a man who had made a terrible decision and didn't know how to face it. Vine watched him quietly. She wasn't sure what she expected, maybe a soft smile, maybe a word of reassurance. Instead, she got silence. And silence, she realized, could cut sharper than any word. When he finally spoke, his voice came low, rough with exhaustion. Last night was mistake. The words dropped like stones between them. Vine didn't move. She blinked once, twice, as if trying to make sense of what he had said. But she had heard him clearly. A mistake, she repeated softly, her voice trembling just enough to betray her. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, sighing. I shouldn't have let things go that far. You know I didn't mean for it to happen. Vine sat up slowly, pulling the sheet closer to her chest, as if it could protect her from the ache blooming inside. You didn't mean for it to happen? She echoed, a bitter smile tugging at her lips. You mean us? He didn't answer, he just stood, reached for his jacket and avoided her eyes. For a moment she thought he might turn back, that he might see her, really see her, and realize what he was throwing away, but he didn't. Jungkook opened the door, hesitated for a long a heartbeat, then said quietly, I'm sorry, Vine. And then he was cocksure, and with it, something inside her cracked. 2 years earlier, Vine had joined Dion and Chase, one of the top marketing firms in the city, straight out of graduate school. She was bright, creative, and ambitious, and John Jungkook, her boss, had noticed that from day one. He was everything she wasn't composed, successful, always a few steps ahead. People whispered that he was cold, but Vine had seen glimpses of warmth in him. A quiet smile when she presented her ideas, a softened tone when he corrected her. The way he listened her words actually cared. Over time, professional admiration had slipped into something else, something dangerous. She told herself it was just a crush, but every late night brainstorming session, every shared look that lingered too long, blurred the lines she had tried to keep. And then came last night, the night that changed everything. Back to the present, Vine didn't go to work the next day. She couldn't. She told her HR she was sick and turned off her phone. The city outside her apartment buzzed with life, but inside she sat curled up on the couch, trying not to reply his words in her head. Last night was a mistake. She could still feel the warmth of his skin, the way his hand had brushed her cheek, like she was something fragile, something he had wanted. If it was a mistake, then why had it felt so real? Days turned into weeks, and Vine tried to bury herself in work. Jungkook kept his distance, polite but distant, professional but detached. It hurt, but she forced herself to match his tone. If he could pretend nothing had happened, so could she. Until one morning she woke up feeling off. It started as nausea, mild at first, then impossible to ignore, feel the stress, but when she missed her second period, panic bloomed quietly in her chest. She bowed a test. She didn't take it right away. It sat on her bathroom counter for hours, mocking her every time she passed by. Finally, when she couldn't stall any longer, she opened the box with trembling hands. 2 minutes later, her world changed again. 2 pink lines. Vine sank onto the floor, her breath coming in shallow waves. For a long moment she couldn't move, couldn't think. Tears blurred her vision, but she wasn't sure if they were from fear or heartbreak. She thought of Jungkook, his words, his retreat, his silence. He had said last night was a mistake, but this tiny unseen life didn't feel like one. A week later, she sat in her car outside Jungkook's office building, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly. Her knuckles were white. She had spent the entire week trying to decide what to do. Every possible outcome scared her. What would he say? What would he even believe her? Would he walk away again? Part of her wanted to protect herself, to raise the baby alone, to never let him hurt her again. But the other part, the one that still loved him, despite everything, couldn't bear the thought of lying. She needed to tell him. When she finally walked to his office, he looked surprised to see her. It had been weeks since he had been alone. "Why?" he said carefully standing. "You don't have an appointment." "I know," she replied quietly. "I just need a few minutes." He gestured for her to sit, his expression unreadable. "Of course, what is this about?" Wine's throat tightened. She reached into her bag, pulling out the folded paper, the clinic confirmation. Her hand shook as she set it on the desk. Jungkook's eyes flicked down, scanning the words. For a second he didn't move, then slowly he looked up at her, color draining from his face. "Wine, is this?" She nodded before he could finish. "I found it last week." Silence. The air between them grew heavy, suffocating. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. Jungkook leaned back, rubbing his temple. "Are you sure?" The question stung, though she hadn't expected it. "Yes, I had it confirmed." He exhaled slowly, his mind racing. I don't understand how." Wine's eyes fell. Her voice stayed steady. "You said last voice was a mistake that day, but mistakes don't disappear, Jungkook. They have consequences." He flinched as if the words had hit her harder than she intended. For a long moment, neither spoke. Jungkook stood walked to the window, staring out at the skyline. When he finally turned back, his voice was low, careful. "I need time to think." Wine's lips parted. "Think? This isn't something I can answer right now." Something inside her broke again, smaller this time, quieter like a candle snuffled out. "You don't need to answer," she said, standing. "I just thought you should know." She left before he could say anything else. As she stepped into the elevator, tears slipped down her cheeks, hot and silent. For a second time in 2 months, she was walking away from him, but this time she wasn't alone. The elevator door slid shut with a soft hiss. Wine leaned against the cool metal wall, pressing a trembling hand over her stomach. It still didn't feel real. The hum of the elevator drowned out her thoughts, but the echo of Jungkook's voice, "I need time to think," rang in her ears. She wasn't sure what hurt more, the rejection or the hesitation. When the elevator reached the ground floor, she stepped out, blinking against the harsh lobby lights. She felt invisible among the chatter and footsteps of people going about their normal lives. Her world had shifted entirely, but no one could see it. Outside, the wind beat against her cheek. She pulled her coat tighter, walking out tremulously down the crowded street, trying to find a piece of herself that still made sense. Later that night, Wine sat curled up on her couch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her apartment was dimly lit, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound. On the coffee table lay a half-empty cup of tea and her phone screened dark. Her best friend Maya had called earlier, but Wine hadn't answered. She didn't know how to explain any of this, not yet. She reached for her phone again, thumb hovering over Jungkook's name in her contacts. She wanted to send a message, something simple, something that might close the distance between them. "I didn't tell you because I wanted anything from you. I told you because you deserve to know." But she couldn't bring herself to press send. What would be the point. He needed time to think. She placed the phone back down and whispered into the empty room, "You have all the time in the world." Tears welled up, but she blinked them away. Crying wouldn't fix anything. Jungkook's apartment. Across the city, Jungkook sat in his dark apartment, still wearing his tie from work. He hadn't turned on the light since he got home. The paper Vine had handed him, the one confirming the pregnancy, lay on his coffee table, at just grazed from how tightly he had been holding it earlier. He couldn't stop thinking about her face when she said those words, "I'm pregnant." A thousand thoughts battled in his mind, guilt, confusion, a strange, unshakable pull toward her. He tried to bury what had happened between them. After that night, he had told himself it was wrong, unprofessional, reckless. He had convinced himself he was protecting her by keeping his distance. But now, every justification fell hollow. He ran a hand through his hair, groaning softly. "What have I done?" The truth was, he had fallen for her long before that night. He just didn't know how to admit it. Not to her, not to himself. Now she was carrying his child. The doctor's visit. 2 weeks later, Vine sat in the waiting room of the clinic, the smell of antiseptic sharp in the air. The rhythmic tick of the clock on the wall matched the pace of her heartbeat. A nurse called her name and she followed her into the small room. "Congratulations," the doctor said kindly after the ultrasound. "You are about 8 weeks along. Everything looks healthy so far." Vine stared at the black and white screen. There, in the middle, was a tiny flutter, a heartbeat, hers still in response. It was the smallest thing she had ever seen, and yet it made everything feel enormous. As she left the clinic clutching the sonogram photo, she realized something had shifted inside her. The fear was still there, but now it was joined by something else. Resolve. Whatever happened, she would do this. A week later, Vine was leaving work late when she saw Jungkook in the parking lot. He was standing beside his car, talking to someone on the phone. When he looked up and saw her, his expression faltered. He ended the call quickly and walked over. "Vine, wait." Her first instinct was to keep walking, but she stopped, standing a few feet away, clutching her back like armor. "How are you?" he asked quietly. She gave a short laugh. "You really want to know?" He looked guilty. "I have been meaning to talk to you." She raised an eyebrow. "You have had plenty of time to think, remember?" He sighed. "I deserve that." "Yeah," she said softly. "You did." They stood in silence, the air heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Jungkook spoke. "I didn't know how to do this right, Vine. I made a mess of things. I thought ending it was a responsible thing to do, that it would protect both of us." She folded her arms. "And how is that working out for you?" He gave a tired smile. "Terribly." Something in his tone softened her anger, but she didn't let it show. "I'm not asking for you anything," she said quietly. "Not your money, not your help. I just needed to tell you the truth." "I know," he said, "but you shouldn't have to go through this alone." Vine frowned. "Don't say things you don't mean." "I mean it." His voice was steady now, his eyes locked on hers. "I may have said last night was a mistake, but I didn't mean you were. I was scared, Vine. I still am. But I want to be there if you let me." Her throat tightened. "It's not that simple." He nodded slowly. "I know, but maybe we can start with simple things." For a moment, they just looked at each other, two people standing in the ruins of something fragile, unsure if they could rebuild it. That night, Vine lay in the bed, unable to sleep. Jungkook's words replied in her mind. Maybe we can start with simple things. Part of her wanted to believe him, to trust what he meant, but another part, the part still carrying the echo of last night, was a mistake, couldn't forget how much it had hurt. She turned on her side, her hand resting on her belly. "We will be okay," she whispered to the little life inside her. "Even if it's just you and me." but deep down she knew she did out completely. Jungkook stayed awake until dawn. She hadn't realized how much he had mixed her, not just her laughter or her ideas at work, but her quiet strength, the way she made him want to be better. He wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear: walking away had been the real mistake. As the morning light spilled through his window, he made a silent promise he would fix what he had broken, no matter how long it took. The city moved around Vine like a current she couldn't escape. Every day she went to work, came home, and tried to pretend that her life was still normal, even though nothing felt normal anymore. The pregnancy was no longer a secret. She could hold Jess in her hand. It was a part of her, a quiet, persistent reality she couldn't ignore. Yet, even in her careful planning, there was one thing she hadn't counted on: Django. It started with a message, simple, short, and almost hesitant. Can we talk? I will come up by after work. J. Vine stared at her phone, thumb hovering over the screen. Her first instinct was to delete it, her second was to ignore it, her third, the one she tried to bury under layers of pride and fear, was to reply, fine, but only for a few minutes. She pressed send and immediately regretted it. Wondering if she had made a mistake, she told herself it was only practical conversation, not a reconciliation. Jungkook arrived at her apartment precisely at 6. He looked unsettled, not his usual composed self, but raw in a way he hadn't seen before. His suit jacket was slightly wrinkled, his tie loose. There was a tension in his jaw that spoke of sleepless nights. Hi, he said quietly, almost a whisper, as if speaking loudly would shatter the fragile truce between them. Hi, she replied. Sitting on the edge of the couch, she kept her hands folded neatly in her lap, even though they were trembling. They stared at each other for a long moment, neither of them knowing where to begin. Finally, Jungkook spoke. I wanted to make sure you were okay, and the baby. Her eyes narrowed. That's your first concern? He flinched. It's important to me. Vine's chest tightened. Part of her wanted to laugh in disbelief. Another part wanted to throw herself into his arms and let the tension of the two last month evaporate. She clenched her fist to stop herself from doing either. I am okay, she said finally. The baby is fine. I have been to the doctor. Everything is fine. Jungkook nodded, relief flushing over his face. Good, that's good. A fragile silence followed with all the words they couldn't say. Over the next few days, Jungkook made a careful effort to be present, not intrusively, not with demands, but with quiet gestures that spoke louder than words. He would send a testing, asking if she needed anything from the store. He would occasionally call not to check up on her but just to say hello or just ask how she was feeling. At first, Vine resisted. She refused to let him back in, unwilling to open the door to someone who had hurt her so deeply. But slowly, she began to notice the small things. The way he remembered her favorite tea, the way he paused before speaking, as if measuring every word to avoid causing her pain. One evening, while Vine was sitting on the balcony of her apartment, watching the sunset, there was a gentle knock at the door. Jungkook, she called, hesitated. He stepped inside, holding a small bag. I thought you might like this, he said, offering her a bundle of herbal teas and a few snacks recommended for her pregnancy. Vine hesitated but took the bag. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he replied simply, a shadow of vulnerability in his eyes that made her heart ache. She studied him. There was a sincerity she hadn't seen in months. The walls she had built around herself was beginning to crack, whether she wanted them to or not. It's thoughtful, she admitted softly. He gave a small, awkward smile. I know I have made mistakes. I don't know how to make more. Vine looked down at her hands, which were resting protectively over her belly. You already have. I know, he said quietly, and I will spend every day trying to fix it if you let me. Her breath caught. It was everything she had been afraid to hear and everything she secretly wanted. Even as he began to be present in small ways, Vine felt the familiar tug of doubt. One night she sat on her bed scrolling through the old messages and photos of her phone, memories of Jungkook, the late night at work, the way he always made her feel seen, the laughter, the arguments, all of it came flooding back. She knows she still loved him, even though part of her didn't trust him. And now the tiny life growing inside her complicated everything further. How can I let him back in? She thought. What if I get hurt again? Yet she also knew deep down that she didn't want to do this alone. One rainy evening, Django came over after work. The rain pounded against the windows and the apartment smelled of wet concrete and coffee. Vine was standing in the kitchen sipping tea when he walked in. Hey, he said softly. Hey, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, then took a step closer. I know I can't fix everything, she said, but I want to be here for you, for the baby, and for us, if that's even possible. Vine's hand trembled as he set her cup down. You said last night was a mistake, she reminded him, voice tight. How can I trust you now? He looked down, ashamed. I was scared. I didn't know how to handle my feelings, but I can't pretend I don't care anymore. And I don't want to pretend with you. For the first time in weeks, Vine let herself breathe. Maybe he was trying. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. Despite the building connection, Vine knew she had to remain strong for her child. She started documenting her pregnancy, keeping track of appointments, reading upon everything she could. She didn't want Jungkook to feel like she needed him, not entirely. But when she felt him at her side, helping her carry groceries or reminding her to take her vitamins, she couldn't help the warmth that spread in her chest. It was tentative, cautious, but it was something, and in her world of uncertainty, even something small felt like hope. One Saturday afternoon, Jungkook came over with a small envelope in his hand. What is this? Vine asked, curious. He handed it to her. Inside was a simple ultrasound frame, the tiny heartbeat visible in the picture. I wanted you to have it, he said softly. I know you already have one, but I want to be part of this too, if you'll let me. Vine stared at the picture, tears threatening to fall. It was a quiet, simple gesture, but it carried the weight of everything they had missed, the nights of silence, the heartbreak, the longing. You are trying, she whispered. I am, he said, taking her hand carefully, and I will keep trying every day if you let me. Her heart ached with a mixture of hope and fear. I don't know if I can fully forgive you yet, she admitted. He nodded. I don't expect want a chance to be there for you and our baby. That's all I am asking for. And for the first time in months, she believed he might mean it. The city seemed heavier now, pressing against Vine in ways it hadn't before. Each day brought its own set of challenges, doctor's appointments, work deadlines, unsolicited advice, and the ever-present reality growing quietly inside her. She had become adept at masking the changes in her life, smiling at colleagues, laughing at jokes, nodding at their right moments. But every evening, when she was alone, the truth of her pregnancy, of her tangled emotions with Jungkook, weighed on her like stone in her chest. And Jungkook, he was everything and yet somehow never fully there. It began over something small, a missed call, a forgotten promise, a misunderstanding that escalated faster than either of them intended. Vine sat on the sofa, arms crossed, eyes sharp. You said you would pick up my prescriptions yesterday. I waited, Jungkook. I trusted you. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flashing in his eyes. I got caught up at work. I told you I would try, Vine. You don't have to make this into a confrontation every time something goes wrong. It's not just about the prescriptions, she snapped, her voice risking. It's about you being present. You say you want to be here, but then there's Jungkook's jaw tightened. You think I don't want to be here? I'm trying, damn it. I don't know how to fix the past, but I'm trying. Vine looked away, eyes welled up. Trying isn't enough sometimes. The silence that followed was suffocating, filled with everything they hadn't said in months. But both knew the truth, their connection was fragile, and one wrong word could shatter completely. After Jungkook left that night, Vine sat quietly in the nursery she had been preparing. The walls were painted a soft pastel, tiny clouds folded neatly in the drawers, a crib standing sentimental in the corner. She ran her fingers over the fabric of the little onesie and whispered, I'm doing this for you, for both of us. Even as she spoke the words aloud, she felt a pang of fear. Could she really do this alone? Could she forgive Jungkook fully? Could he truly be there for them? Jungkook meanwhile sat in his apartment, the weight of the argument pressing on him like a vice. He realized how easily he could lose Vine, again how quickly doubt could undo the fragile trust they had begun to rebuild. He picked up his phone and stared at her name for several minutes before typing. I know I messed up, I don't want forgiveness yet, but I'm not giving up. I will be there, Vine, I promise. He didn't send it immediately. He sat with the words, committing to them, feeling the responsibility pressing heavier than ever before. When he finally pressed send, he knew it wasn't a magical fix. It was just a start. The following weekend, Jungkook showed up at Vine's apartment with a carefully wrapped gift, a soft, hard night blanket for the baby. Vine raised an eyebrow. You made this? He shrugged, a shy smile tugging at his lips. I asked my sister for help, but yes, I wanted you to have something from me for the baby. She accepted it quietly, feeling her heart twist. It wasn't just a gift, it was a statement, a declaration, an acknowledgement that he was trying. Thank you, she murmured. He met her gaze. I mean it, Vine. I'm here. I want to be here. Vine felt a flicker of hope that perhaps he could keep that promise. Not everything was smooth. Friends and colleagues offered unsolicited opinions. Strangers in the street gave half smiles. Whispers followed her in the grocery store, the kind of judgment she hadn't anticipated. You are so young. Are you sure about this? Do you ever know what you're doing? Each comment felt like a small knife, but she refused to let them see her falter. The baby had made her stronger, more resolute. And through it all, Jungkook remained a steady presence, even when she hadn't fully trusted him yet. He carried groceries, accompanied her to doctor's appointment, and simply sat with her in silence when the world began too much. One rainy night, Vine found herself standing by the window, watching the raindrops race down the glass. Jungkook joined her, a quiet presence behind her shoulder. Do you ever think about what it would have been like if things had been different? He asked softly. She didn't answer immediately. All the time, she admitted, his side, his hand brushing hers. I kept thinking, if I had said the right thing, done the right thing, maybe I wouldn't have lost you for those weeks. She turned to him, eyes glistening. You didn't lose me, Django. I'm still here, and so is the baby. But it's not just about us anymore. I know, he whispered. I don't want to lose you again. Vine felt the truth of his words, despite the fear, despite the doubts. She wanted to believe him. Weeks later, a sudden scare brought everything to the front forefront. Vine felt sharp pain and fear grip her like a vice. She called Jungkook in a panic. I am on my way, he said, his voice taut with worry. He arrived within minutes, rushing her to the hospital. Watching him pace the waiting room, wringing his hands, she realized how deeply he cared, how much he had changed in these months. The doctor confirmed it was a false alarm, but the experience left them both shaken. I don't ever want to be without you, Jungkook said quietly, holding her hand tightly. Wine met his gaze, searching for any hint of deception. There was none, only sincerity. I know, she whispered back. As the months passed, Wine and Jungkook settled into a tentative routine. Their connection strengthened, and Wine remained cautious. She knew that life was unpredictable, that promises could break, and that trust took time to rebuild. The baby grew inside her, a constant reminder of both the mistake and the possibility of new beginnings. Jungkook attended appointments, helped with preparations, and slowly, through the consistent actions rather than words, began to earn her trust. And yet, the memory of the last night was a mistake, lingered a shadow that neither could erase entirely. On a calm afternoon, Vine sat in the nursery, looking at the little crib. Jungkook stood beside her, her hands touching lightly. We don't know what the future holds, she said softly. No, he agreed, but we can face it together. She smiled faintly, letting the warmth of his presence shape him. Together, she repeated. It wasn't perfect. There were doubts, fears, and the weight of everything they had endured in these months. Vine felt a fragile hope of possibility, that love, even the complicated and messy, could survive. And as she rested her hand on her growing belly, she realized that sometimes mistakes could lead to unexpected beginnings.